Guten Tag, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren. Es freut mich sehr, Sie hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Ich präsentiere 50 plus Döner.
Good morning, y'all.
Good morning, y'all.
Good morning. Well, it's not morning anywhere where we are, but hello. Welcome back to 50 Plus Donor. It's been a while. We are obviously joined by a very special guest, one Derek Ray. How are you,
Yes,
Derek?
sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, guys. I'm very well, thanks. Enjoying
Yes,
a bit of
sir.
holiday time this week
Yes,
after
sir.
the long season, of course, in Germany, covering the Bundesliga and then the FIFA Club World Cup. So this is downtime, and I'm determined to enjoy that.
We're part of your downtime. I don't think anyone has
Thank you.
ever considered us.
Thank you for the invitation for downtime. Yes.
So let's just jump right into it. We got a lot to go. We've got our questions. We've got our game at the end that we have a little bit of a surprise on. You might be a little shocked by it, but in a good way. In a good way.
Okay.
All right. Well, my mom's watching, and she doesn't watch soccer a lot. So introduce yourself.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom. I've heard a lot about you, and I hear that you're the coolest mom anywhere in the world.
Oh, my
And
Lord.
I think you like the Bundesliga as well. So, that's even more kudos. So thank you for watching. It's a great honor to be talking to your mom, Jake.
And my sister. Oh, my sister's there too. Anyway, this isn't like an Oscar award show. Anyway. Yeah, so what do you do? Where did it start? Like, let's kind of jump in that way.
In terms of commentating, in terms of the sport, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from Aberdeen in the northeast of Scotland. If people know the geography, they may not. North Sea coast, city of around 200,000 when I was growing up. And of course, in Aberdeen, as in any Scottish city, the sport that you play, the sport that you follow is football, So that's what I grew up with. And, from a very young age, heard my dad and other adults talking about the local team, Aberdeen. Happened to be a very good team not long after I first started watching them. In fact, you could argue they were probably the best team in all of Europe in 1983 when they beat Bayern and Real Madrid en route to winning the old Cup Winners' Cup. Imagine beating Bayern in the quarterfinal and Real Madrid in the final of a European competition. I mean, nowadays, if anybody did that, you would say, yeah, you fully deserve to win a European trophy. But that was jumping into the future. So 70s, I grew up. And in terms of the commentating, I think it's fair to say it's something I always had an ambition to do without really having a serious plan for it, because how could you? When I was growing up, I didn't know any other commentators. There were about 4 or 5 in all of the UK, and I used to listen to them and hang on their every word. But I would make my own tapes, my own recordings on a very small contraption, a stereo cassette recorder that was battery operated, and I would walk around with it and talk to myself, and even plucked up the courage from a young age to take it into the stadium, to Pittodrie, the stadium in Aberdeen. And of course, got a lot of funny looks for many years. There's that silly laddie who talks to himself. But what I didn't realize was I was building a body of work, and eventually got involved with a thing called hospital radio, which is something that most people in the UK have heard of, probably not in the USA. And it's essentially a radio service for patients in hospitals.
Yes,
So
sir.
you bring to the table or to the airwaves, as we did, a lot of local content. And of course, that meant, in my case, a lot of local football content. And so they said, would you like to commentate on the Aberdeen first team and reserve team games? So there was my chance to do that at I'm not going to say a higher level, but it was still amateur commentary. But at least to put myself to the test on that basis, and kept on doing that. Got my big break at 19 when I sent in a tape to the BBC. I'd actually started to communicate with my hero. I mean, how often does this happen for a young person? My hero wasn't a footballer, was a commentator, David Francie, who was the voice of Scottish football. And he very kindly responded to my letter, and we stayed in touch. And he was actually the one who passed it on to his producer and said, you might want to have a listen to this, because I think this young chap has got something. And that's where it all started. And I got my chance, actually, because he had a knee injury and couldn't do a game. And he continued to have this knee injury a few days later, which meant that the second game I ever did on the air as a radio commentator was England against Scotland at Wembley. So
Wow.
just the oldest international fixture of them all. I'd never been to Wembley before, and you can imagine that was pretty special for a young fellow at 19. So that's sort of an abbreviated history of the commentary side of it.
And what specifically about commentating, right? Like you could have done anything other part of soccer. Why commentating?
I don't know. I think I used to listen to commentators and think, I really, would hang on their every word. And I think I always liked words. I always liked languages from a young age. And I liked using words and sort of mixing them up. And I don't know. I think I realized early on, I played football like we all did, but never to any particularly high level. And I think I just thought, well, who knows if I keep on doing this, who knows, without thinking that realistically it's what I would end up doing. I thought what was more likely was perhaps being a written journalist, because there were more jobs. I knew the people, or some of the people who worked for the local newspaper. And so that seemed more in the realm of the possible at that point. But the more I did it, the more I just really enjoyed it. And I loved the discipline of it as I began to do things on air and realized it's not just talking at random. It's actually having a certain structure in your head and having hopefully some knowledge. And so when you're commentating on a game, you are viewing it from a different aspect in comparison with fans, and I go to games as a fan from time to time as well, thoroughly enjoy that. But it's a different experience, because when you're there as a commentator, you are working and you're trying to give your best to make the broadcast you're doing the most entertaining and the most informative that it possibly can be.
Nice.
I will say when we're doing watch-alongs, when me and Jake are doing watch-alongs, and I'm just thinking about everything that you have to think about going into commentating, it's a lot. So that is definitely props to you on that, because I couldn't even imagine. I have trouble just like following the game sometimes. So,
well, I think it's nice of you to say that. I mean, I think that we do come in for a lot of criticism as commentators, rightly so. We're in the firing line. We are a matter of opinion. But I do always say to people, okay, if you think that it's an easy job, put on the headphones and try it, which I think people would find is pretty hair-raising. You have to be quite calm. I think that's the interesting sort of contradiction with it. On the one hand, you want to bring a certain excitement to the broadcast and to the viewer, but it has to be controlled. It has to be within a framework. As a producer said to me many years ago, he said, it should be conversational, but it should be disciplined. So it's a bit like, if you go into a pub and you listen to a conversation, and people often say to me, oh, the best broadcasting, it would be just overhearing, the equivalent of overhearing a pub conversation. I say, not really, because after a while, the pub conversation becomes a bit boring. You get to a lot of dead ends and a lot of stops, and okay, well, I'm not going to listen to that anymore. So with the commentary, it does have to be structured, and we do have to know something about every player, knowing that we may not use that information either on that particular day or the next day. So you prepare a lot, and you realize that what comes out might be about 1% of the entire preparation, but you never quite know which 1% will be relevant that day.
Yeah, I skipped out on your famous notes that you put up a little bit. Maybe someone in chat can bring it up, but we've got.
I might have some here. Yeah. There's one from
oh my goodness!
Wow. Yeah, let's bring this up now because
there you go.
because Ryan Lemmy in chat was like, the cheat sheets that Derek writes up are fascinating, so we can skip ahead. Also, chat, if you have any questions, feel free to send them in.
We've got ours, but if you got
we have ours, but we're always taking chat input.
Oh, we do have a relevant one. What does the color coding mean?
Yeah.
So the color coding really is what I like to do is color code according to the team. So that if I were doing, say, Borussia Mönchengladbach and Bayern, I would do Gladbach in green and I would do Bayern in red. And it's just a kind of I realized studying languages years ago that color coding and writing things down does for most people actually help with the photographic memory process. I believe that most of us do have, we may not know it, but we have a photographic memory. so we can remember when we wrote things down and in what context. And I know that applies to me. So I do that with the two teams. I have everything color coded, just so that, you know, if I sort of have a little lapse in concentration, and I do glance over to my notes during the game. I don't often do that during the game because there's no time, but I want to make sure I'm looking at the right team. You know, I don't have to waste 2 seconds searching for the right team. So that's really why I do it that way. And I don't think I'm the only one, you know, talking to other commentators who've done this for a long time as well. I think color coding is part of you know, how we operate.
And you mentioned Bayern and Gladbach, so we obviously have to roll into the Bundesliga part of it. You've commentated so many different things, but people, I think, in this sphere and elsewhere, definitely tie you with the Bundesliga the most. And it seems you make the league very, very fun to follow and make it easy in English language capacity. Why the Bundesliga specifically?
Well, it's a bit of a sort of a late in life or later in life dream come true for me, because I'll give you the background with regard to Germany and German. And I know you have this background as well, Jake. When I was 7 years of age, the 74 World Cup happened. And of course, it was in West Germany, as it was. You know, we had two Germanys back then. And people will remember, or maybe won't know that West Germany played East Germany, famously lost to East Germany en route to West Germany winning the World Cup in 1974. You know, it sounds confusing, but that did happen. So that was my introduction to a big football tournament, and I was completely obsessed with it. Watched every game with my father. And what it did was it planted a seed, not just about, you know, football on that level, but about Germany. And I wanted to know everything about Germany, every city. You know, where is Dortmund? Where is Frankfurt? Where are these places that I'm seeing on my TV screen? And we in Scotland, we would learn languages beginning at sort of the age 8 or 9. And either you were in the French class or you were in the German class. So I was always hopeful I would land in the German class. And luckily, 50%, I was in the German class. And I found that for whatever reason, and I think we all have this experience with certain subjects at school, it really came quite naturally to me. Maybe sort of tying in with the broadcasting, because you have to have a sort of a certain verbal dexterity to be a commentator. And I think that applies, you know, with the study of languages too. And I just found that I wanted to imbibe and learn more. And we had, because of Aberdeen, and again, you know, look it up on a map. You'll see Aberdeen is right on the coast, the northeast of Scotland, on the coast, on the North Sea. And if you were in old times, if you would have traveled by boat in a certain direction, you would have eventually come to Hamburg in northern Germany. So those were the waterways, or the roadways rather, of the time many centuries ago, before there were roads. But what we had this sort of permanent radio signal of NDR radio, North German radio from Hamburg. So I would, in tandem with my studying German at school, when I would get home, I would sit and listen to NDR. And I would sometimes fall asleep to Das Nachtprogramm der ARD, which basically wasn't all that exciting. It was a lot of German music mostly, and occasional traffic reports. You know, with the people who've spent time in Germany will be familiar with the beep sound that sort of goes on before there's a warning about a Falschfahrer, a driver going the wrong way or something like that. But so I would often fall asleep to Das Nachtprogramm der ARD. But then what was really special was I began to realize that you could also listen to the Bundesliga on NDR. So they had this thing called the Radiokonferenz, or the Konferenzschaltung, as it was often called back then, basically switching from game to game, only for the last few minutes of the second half. But it was just something that brought Germany to life for me. Before I'd even visited Germany at that point, you know, I was listening to commentators talking about Tor in Bochum, you know, and getting very excited about that. And, you know, as somebody who wanted to be a commentator, but also, you know, was a fledgling linguist, German speaker, this was my secret world, if you like. You know, it was a world that nobody else understood. I think as a child, you need a bit of a secret world. You need that sort of escapism. And that's what I had, I think, with German radio. And again, it's a long-winded way of saying, you know, if you flash forward a few years, German always my best subject, studied it at university, developed a relationship with a family actually in Hessen, in northern Hessen, through my school. And when I say northern Hessen, this was actually right on the border of the two Germanys. So it comes back full circle to West and East Germany. So on the western side, but when I say right on the border, I mean 20 meters from the border. That's where the family was that I stayed with. And still in touch with them. Went to see them just a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
So we're still very much in touch. And that's the great thing about these exchanges. And of course, that gives you a big boost when you're, 16, 17, and you go to spend a significant chunk of time in a place like that. You develop, I think, your German skills quite quickly, and also even colloquial skills that you wouldn't have had otherwise, because you're exposed to new dialects and sounds and things like that. So obviously football was part of that experience too. I'd go to watch Hessen Kassel, the local team initially in the Zweite Bundesliga. This was before there was a Zweite Bundesliga as we know it now. And Frankfurt down the road, you could jump on the train and be there in a couple of hours. So that was really exciting as somebody who was a football fan, to be able in the 80s to go to these places that again were sort of secret places, because none of my contemporaries would ever have had that experience at that age. So it was my own little world. I'd just go alone, would talk to people on the terraces and sort of take it from there. So I always had this German side of me. I would always constantly be going back to Germany. But it really wasn't until 2009 when I went back to work in the UK. I'd been in the USA for many years with ESPN, but they opened a channel in the UK and asked, would I like to be part of it as a commentator? And it was mainly to cover Scottish football, obviously being from Scotland, some English football. But then they threw in, they said, would you like to do the Bundesliga? Would that interest you? And I said, would I like to do the Bundesliga? That's what I've always wanted to do. So I would very often be given the Friday night Bundesliga game. This continued into BT Sport, who took over the rights from ESPN UK when they folded the channel in 2013. And then probably the biggest thing that happened after that was around 2015, the Bundesliga decided that they needed to sort of catch up with the Premier League in terms of having a world feed with English language commentary, which they'd had before, but only on a couple of games per week. So now they wanted to have full coverage of every single game. And John Hartley, who's still our boss there at the Bundesliga World Feed, he approached me and said, would you like to have a role, would you like to play a role in that? And of course, I had already sort of been putting feelers out saying, even though it might be hard with my schedule, I would love to do it. So we came together on that. And I've been doing that ever since. And then ESPN got the rights to it in 2020. And again, I'd worked for them for a long time. They knew of my interest in that and said, yeah, well, I wonder if you would like to come on board with us and be our voice for the games that we cover too. So this is the thing that people probably don't realize, that it's sort of a two-headed thing for me, but it ends up in the USA on ESPN, whether or not I'm working for the World Feed or for ESPN. So sometimes I'm doing a World Feed commentary, and it's not designed specifically for ESPN, but it ends up on ESPN. So some people I think know what that is, what the World Feed is, but that is the history of my tie to Germany. And of course, these days I spend, lucky enough to be in Germany for 100+ days a year. So it's perfect for me.
Before we ask our next question, I feel like the big question I got of that, do you think your life would have been different if you ended up in the French class?
It might well have, yeah. I might be talking to you about Paris Saint-Germain and Marseille at this point. I don't know. I think some things are. I mean, I do think some things are meant to be, and I think there was, from a young age, I had this thing for Germany, and as I say, I'm very happy that it worked out that way. I don't think it matters what language you learn. I think that. The fact is, some languages will speak to a person more than others will, and I'm grateful that I had this gut feeling about German and what it would mean to me to study it, and I cherish my time in Germany. I realize I'm very lucky because I'm doing something that most people really would want to do. I always say, remember, it is a job. I'm not on permanent holiday. I am working every day. There's rarely a day goes by when I'm not doing work of some sort, whether it's preparation, whether it's actually commentating, and the video game that I do as well, have done for a few years. But it's great fun, and I'm extremely grateful that I've had this opportunity to do it for so many years.
The game will be relevant soon, but BFOM, your turn.
We do have a few questions from chat that I just want to kind of quick fire go through. So from Live in La Liga Loca, shout out to that show. What does your preparation for match day look like?
Well, it sort of follows along the same pattern for every game, but it just depends how much time I have. So sometimes I'm trying to, prepare for 3 games in a week. Usually no more than that. 4 would be a lot, but 3, let's just say 3 might be the norm. I try to start ahead of time so that if I have an odd day, I might just sort of start chipping away at each game. I was actually doing some today. I'm supposed to be on holiday, but I was doing some today. I'll whisper. I really start with sort of basic things, just like historical things, making sure I have my history on each club. I then go through all the news of each club because, say a team like, I don't know, last season, I didn't do Holstein Kiel at all last season. Now, say they're now in the Zweite Bundesliga, but say I were to suddenly do them, I want to be able to go back and have a look at every significant news story, probably going back over a year or two. So that's what I will do. And I won't write everything down, but I'll look at the key points and write down what I need to write down. Same for actual players. I'll go through all the players and find news stories first, and then some biographical things, and just fill in my sheet. And I showed you that sheet earlier. I fill it in with what I think the starting 11 might be, or approximately. Same with the subs. And then as we get closer to match day, it's a matter of fine-tuning it. And we add these days little statistical things that we get from the league. We have this wonderful service called the Commentary Live system, and that helps us a lot with just making sure. What's important is to have, we can all have our statistics, but they have to be consistent with what the Bundesliga is saying. And the reason I make that point is that things like assists nowadays, different publications will award assists or won't award assists. So I have to always go with what the Bundesliga has awarded. So it's important that if I say Florian Wirtz, has had 11 assists, that he has had 11 assists, and in terms of the Bundesliga having given him 11 and not 9, and maybe somebody else has given him 11. So that's sort of an insight into it. It never really stops. It's a constant scribbling exercise. I'm a big believer in writing it all down, as I said, because to be honest, I could do a lot of this on the computer, but I'm not sure I would learn. I'm not sure I would be imbibing it, to use that word that I used earlier on. So I think by writing it down, it does implant it in the brain much more effectively. And I've got a favorite little coffee shop in Köln, in the Südstadt, and I go in there most days when I'm in Germany. And of course, they know exactly what I bring in, these silly sheets. And I sometimes sit there for hours and talk to the wait staff who I've become friendly with, and just scribble. But it's all part of the job.
Nice.
Yes. And one more before we get back to the sheet. Do you have a favorite match you've ever called?
Well, I think the one that really will go down for me as the best ever, and I doubt it will be topped, I think that would be Milan-Liverpool in Istanbul in the 2005 Champions League final, because I went to Istanbul for that game for ESPN. Quite a big production. We were there 5 days before the final, broadcasting live from the Blue Mosque and various other landmarks in Istanbul. Fell in love with the city, loved and still love the culture there. And of course, then we broadcast the game, and it's 3-0 to Milan at halftime. And I'm thinking, okay, we've come all this way for the most one-sided final in Champions League history or European competition final history. But then, of course, Liverpool produced the comeback of all comebacks. And I think what people have to remember is Milan at that time were the cream of the crop. They were the class act in European football. Liverpool, as I've said before, in interviews, they were sort of a ragtag and bobtail Liverpool. They're nowhere close to the Liverpool that we know now. But for that to happen in a big European final, in the Champions League final, I don't know that we'll see that again in my lifetime. Liverpool eventually winning on penalties, having been 3-0 down. So to have been able to put words to that was really special. And I think it also, for me, goes down as particularly resonant because I hear from so many people in the USA specifically who were maybe, I don't know, 14 or 15 or just come home from school and maybe weren't big football fans at that point. But the number of people who've said to me that game, it wasn't because of my commentary, that game made me a football fan, because a lot of people, and you guys can speak to this, in the USA didn't necessarily get it, but then they saw that in this exotic location far away. If you could somehow listen back to it with our commentary, there's almost a sort of a telephone line quality to the audio because, it was a different era, but it somehow lends a bit of authenticity to it all. And so I think we were conscious when we came off air that not only had we witnessed, a very important piece of football history, but one that would go down as sort of the first football experience for a lot of younger viewers.
Yeah, I feel like that was, like you're saying, that I feel like there's so many Premier League fans that are like, oh, I'm a fan since 2005. And it's like exactly because of that game. So
Yeah. Well, I think it's true.
To bring it back to or I guess one of the questions that I have in seeing that video that you said about the AI driven Bundesliga stats thing, how exactly has being an announcer changed since you first started? Like, obviously technology has been a part of it, but what about like the expectations, or like have you noticed anything you've had to change since you first started to adapt to now?
I think the basics are still the same, to be honest. I think the fundamentals are exactly as they were. If anything, it's become a bit more conversational with a co-commentator. When I started doing TV, when I got my first chance as a TV commentator, having done radio initially, we didn't have co-commentators. You basically did it on your own. And if you did have a co-commentator, that person would come in about once every 5 minutes and really not say very much at all. And so it wasn't the level of detail that you might get nowadays. I think nowadays it's become a bit more of a sort of a back and forth between the commentator and the co-commentator. We try to not make it too much that way because, as I said earlier, disciplines. It does have to have a certain discipline and not annoy the people who are watching it, the viewers. So I think that has changed a lot. I think styles always change. I think in the UK in the 80s, if you go back and listen, I think most of us, and this would apply to me as well, we were all a little bit posher sounding than is the case nowadays. And I think this was just the influence of the commentators we grew up hearing. They tended to all have sort of very sort of accents as though they had gone to rather posh schools in the southeast of England, And so obviously I'm Scottish and not English, but I think even in Scotland, we tended to subconsciously mimic this a little bit. But then there was a sea change, I think, in the 90s. And I think the BBC updated itself and realized, you've been to the UK. In the UK, you travel 10 miles and the accent changes. I mean, it literally is like that. So really on TV, what you have with voices should be a situation whereby the voices that you hear have accents that belong to the whole of the UK. And so you do hear that much more now. And obviously I'm, Scottish and Scotland is my country, and people who are in the USA don't always recognize my sound as a Scottish sound. But if you ask somebody from England, where's Derek Ray from? They'll say, oh yeah, of course he's from Scotland. I can hear it. We have little vowel sounds that we make, ow, ow, that ow sound and the r sound that we make. That are Scottish sounds, even though my accent may not be the strongest Scottish accent that you've ever heard. So that has changed, I think. What else would I say has changed? I think now it's just a lot more in terms of the work that's out there. Previously, you didn't have a Champions League on the scale that you have now. You didn't have these bloated tournaments that we have now. You didn't have a Women's World Cup that people cover. It's just become much bigger. There are more opportunities for commentators now. I think that's the one, the good thing for anybody who's an aspiring commentator. There are more gigs, but it's not necessarily a stable way of making a living. You have to be good, but you have to be lucky as well.
You got one, B-Flum? We have a bunch of questions. But
we have a bunch of questions to go through.
We are not tennising this very well.
No, don't worry. I'm enjoying it. This is great.
I'm gonna turn back to chat. Since you're fluent in German, have you been on a commentating team in German, or has it only been English?
No, only English, but I have been a guest on German shows. There's a program called Doppelpass on a Sunday, which you'll know, which is a bit of an institution, and it was a great thrill to be invited on there a couple of years ago now, less than a couple of years ago. And I'm often asked, to be interviewed talking usually about the Bundesliga and its projection around the world. But no, I've never commentated in German, and I've always stopped short of that because much as I'm proud of my fluency in German, I'm a bit of a believer that there is a difference between mother tongue ability in a language and not mother tongue. I just sort of think my mother tongue is English, and would I be giving my best? Probably would be giving my best, but would I be giving the viewer, the listener, their best? So yeah, I have not done that, but obviously when I'm in Germany, I'm talking German every second of every minute, and usually even when I'm not in Germany, often dreaming in German, which I think is once you do that, I think is a sign that the language has become part of you.
Do you have a favorite person? Well, you don't have to answer this, but do you have a favorite person that you commentate with, or do you have someone who you wish you could commentate with?
I think it would be wrong to single out one person because I've had so many great partners down the years in different sort of eras of my career, and it honestly would be difficult to sort of say that one person was better than all the others. In terms of somebody I wish I could have worked with, I'm not sure that there is anybody because I've been pretty lucky to work with, if you were to name most of the prominent English language co-commentators in TV football, I think I've probably worked with all of them at one time or another. So, yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about that long and hard, but there's nobody that really springs to mind. What I like is they all have their own styles, and it's a little bit like, I always think it's a bit like a football formation. Depending on the strengths or weaknesses or the style of the person you're working with, you adapt your style a little bit too. So it's a bit like a center half, center back in football playing beside somebody who's good technically, maybe doesn't have great pace. You compensate for that lack of pace with your own, changing what you do a little bit. And I think that's how we work as a team as well. And we tend to always talk before a game as a two-person team and talk about what the issues are for the day, how we see the game, what we might want to say at certain times, what are key points to make. And I think we can sort of help each other that way a little bit too, because sometimes a co-commentator will make a point that amid all the research I've done, I had not so much overlooked, but wasn't uppermost in my mind. But the co-commentator saying it to me will go, okay, yeah, that's a really good point. Let's make sure that we bring that up in the first 10 minutes. But no, I've been really fortunate, and so many good ones from all the way when I started. John Gregg, who was the legendary captain of Rangers, manager of Rangers, captain of Scotland. He was my first co-com, and will always be grateful to him. He was a bit like a sort of a father figure to me when I was the young commentator coming through the ranks. And in the Bundesliga, we have so many really good ones. You'll know them all. Everybody from Patrick Ovomoyela to Stefan Freund to Sebastian Kneißl to Julia Simic. We're, I think, well placed when it comes to co-coms, and apologies to those I haven't mentioned. But as I say, that is the difficulty. I'd have to mention them all, and they all bring something to the game.
Yeah, I think everyone who gets into the league always remarks how high the quality of Bundesliga announcers are. I always get mad when we do our watch along and we have to mute the broadcast before the copyright people get us.
Oh no.
We got another quick one, and then we're asking a few more, and then we want to leave time for fun time because fun time is an institution here at 50 Plus Donor. So we have, what are the most difficult matches to call?
I think the most difficult matches to call are teams that you don't cover a lot, and especially if the quality of the game is not as high. I've always said it's much easier to cover a really high quality game than it is to cover a game when possession is changing hands every 2 or 3 seconds and there's no flow or fluency to the match. I think as well, the other thing that's really hard is commentating on games, and this is something all commentators will tell you. Commentating on games when one of the teams or both of the teams are playing with numbers that are very hard to see. And we ran into this quite a lot during the Club World Cup. I don't quite know why this was an issue, but it was. A lot of the teams had numbers that were not easy to see. Now, that's okay because we have other devices, boot colors that I always research right before kickoff with my binoculars. I'm always looking while they're warming up to see what boot colors they're wearing. But there's been a tendency the last few months for players all to wear white boots. And just imagine if they all have similar haircuts, you can't see the numbers. Part of the job is identifying. So they are, for me, the hardest games by far. They are the hardest ones because as a commentator, you want to always identify the player early. You want to be able to it's a key thing for the viewer to know, because I think, most people don't think about it. But if you're watching at home casually, you're not necessarily going to know who every single player is. If it's your team, you will. But if it's not, that might pass you by a little bit. So that would definitely be the biggest challenge. A game like that where you can't easily see the shirt numbers and other identifying features are not readily available.
Nice. Beef One, I feel like you have to ask the question that I was like, oh, this is such a good question. The one
I have to make sure I remember which one
that, dude.
This is. Where did you say this?
So 15. Question 15.
Question 15. Oh, my fault. Okay, thank you. If you were not working as an announcer or a journalist, what could you see yourself doing professionally?
Well, that's a really good question. I sometimes think about this, and when I was younger, I would have said that being a commentator was the dream job, but you don't really think you're going to get to do your dream job. As I said, I didn't know any commentators, and how do you even become a commentator anyway? I think the job that I really quite fancied and thought that I might be quite good at was that of a simultaneous interpreter translator at an international organization, somewhere like it was the EEC back then, became the EU or the UN, or something of that nature. And again, that probably would have seemed like quite a lofty goal as a young person, because again, it's not the sort of thing that you hear of every day of the week. Oh yeah, what does that guy do? Oh, he's a interpreter, translator at the United Nations. But I think either that or a teacher. I thought that teaching languages would be really rewarding, and I think this part of me would actually quite like to do that. I think if I ever slow down from broadcasting, which I have no intention of doing in the near future, but if ever I were to do that, I would quite like the idea of being a teacher, and either teaching English to people in Germany or the other way around, or the other one that I've always thought about is I've always quite liked the idea of being a tour guide. I think that, and again, that might be a retirement thing someday. I don't know, but I like the idea of taking people around a place that I know well and have a lot of love for, and telling the stories. So I suppose that comes down to what I do, which is storytelling to an extent.
We have a big teacher demographic in the 50 Plus Donor fandom, so they probably absolutely love hearing that.
Good stuff.
And then, go ahead, Beefum.
I wanted to make sure I asked this one because we're about a month away from the Bundesliga season starting. So I wanted to know if you had anything you are looking forward to the most this upcoming season, or any stories that we think we should track as it starts and rolls along?
You know what? I always feel going into a Bundesliga season that I'm sort of looking forward to everything. There's not one thing or one team, over all the others. I'm just ready, or will be ready on, when is it? The 22nd of August, to be inside the stadium again. I always just sort of take a few minutes to myself, before the 20 minutes before the game starts, just look around and sort of smile to myself and say, yeah, we're back. This is what we love. This is what we love. Yeah, we're in the place where we want to be, and the atmosphere is unrivaled. I'll give you a few that I'm interested in. I'm very interested in, for example, Leverkusen post Wirtz, post Xabi Alonso, post Frimpong, and Ta. You can add to that as well. How are they going to get on? I really don't know. With Erik ten Hag as the new coach, I don't know. I'm sort of looking at the squad and going, well, they still should be okay. But at the same time, it wouldn't shock me if they ended up sixth or something like that. I don't have a good read on that. Similarly, Leipzig, for example, not in Europe. And, they're not loved by every fan of German football, but they are part of the story. But didn't make it into Europe. But then they've gone on this spree, I think we would call it that, but going back to their roots a little bit by signing younger players when they hadn't been doing that. But they have a coach in Ole Werner who's not known for bringing on young players. So that sort of interests me as well. But then, you get to, I think the two who I'm really probably most interested in, just from the point of view of being back, are Hamburg and Köln. Because I think that, again, when you have two big Traditionsvereine who've been in the Zweite Bundesliga, Hamburg for a lot longer than Köln, and they're back in the Bundesliga, you do ask, where do they stack up? And again, I don't really know. I will make a prediction. I don't think either one will be demoted. I think they'll both stay up. I think the squads are strong enough. I wouldn't be looking at Hamburg or Köln to go down. So these are just some of the things, but it's like anything else, isn't it, guys? The season will start, and 2 weeks in, there'll be a crisis story somewhere, there'll be a surprise story somewhere, and we'll be off on a different tangent covering that, following that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, part of that prediction makes me allegedly very happy, and this is also a good segue. Someone asked, "Fun?" ? It's fun because we literally never tell the guests what we're doing for the second half of the show.
Yeah.
So we are going to switch gears here. How do I do this? There we go. It's Derek Ray Fun Hours. The rules.
Ooh.
We're playing Bois or Ay Ay Ay. And then we're playing Scotland or Germany at the same time. Have you ever played two games at once? So
no, but I'm willing to give it a go.
So one will be multiple real life situations, and you have to tell me if you would say Bois or Ay Ay Ay.
Okay.
And then we'll have two towns that are in Scotland and Germany that are pretty similar. I did do research. And you'd have to tell us where you'd vacation at, and me and Beeflum will guess what your answer will be. We don't actually keep up with the points. So
is it one for Scotland and one for Germany?
Exactly,
That's how it is. Okay.
And they'll be appropriately labeled as well.
Okay, good.
All right, slide number 1. You go to an airport a little longer than you'd like a little later before your flight. You get to the security line, and it is long. Bois or Ay Ay Ay?
Ay 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 ay.
Yeah, that's what I would have said for sure. I even say that now.
I feel like Ay 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 is just in my vocabulary now because of how much Bundesliga I watch, and most of the games are Derek, and it's just like every game there's a moment where somebody fluffs their lines and it's like Ay Ay Ay.
Yeah, that is one of the most biting pieces of commentary, especially when it's your team. There's nothing worse than Cone going on a counter and then pooping it away and then hearing Ay Ay Ay. It's like, okay. All right, slide number 2. Perth, Scotland, or Stuttgart, Germany? Where would you vacation?
My guess would be Stuttgart.
I'm going to say Stuttgart, too.
Yeah, you're both right.
Hey, let's go. What do you think? What makes you choose one or the other?
Well, nothing against Perth. It's a nice place, and you've got some great spots around it. You know, Loch Tay is nearby, but I spent a lot of time there as a youngster, so I know Perth maybe too well. Stuttgart, I know pretty well. I've been there many, many times. But what I like about Stuttgart is the access that you have to so many other interesting parts of Germany. And indeed, you don't have to go too far to cross the border into France. And I like Stuttgart. I think it's slightly underrated as a city.
VfB Americana. I can't see chat, but I'm sure VfB Americana is taking that all.
It says Stuttgart mentioned.
Yeah, you should have never said that.
Well, I should have mentioned for VfB Americana that, of course, also in Stuttgart you can have Maultaschen.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know why I didn't mention that first, but there you go.
Yes, the bingo card. All right. You just recorded some lines for EAFC 26, not an ad, but you looked down and your mic was unplugged the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Ay.
I think I would have guessed blah of just like the immediate reaction of seeing your mic unplugged. But what were you gonna say?
I could see that. I would have said ay. I feel like, and for a blah, it would have to be a little less like annoying.
Okay.
I think there's a third one that I might have used, which is an old time one from German commentators, which might have been Junge.
Oh no. We say that a lot in FC Cologne world, allegedly.
There you go. It's a good one.
All right. 4, Dundee or Freiburg?
I've heard Freiburg is beautiful.
I'm going to say Freiburg, too.
Yep, Freiburg it is.
Why for this one?
Freiburg is one of my favorite cities anywhere, to be honest. I think it's got just something about it. You've got the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, very nearby. Again, similar to Stuttgart in the sense that you have other countries, even closer actually, France and Switzerland, and you can be in Basel in 45 minutes by train from Freiburg. You can cross into Alsace, which is my favorite part of France. It's a university city. It's a green city. It's you see people on bicycles everywhere. It just always strikes me as a healthy sort of city, the kind of place that I think would be a great place to call home. And nice people, really, really warm, nice people, distinctive accent, think Christian Streich. And yeah, Freiburg. Again, Dundee. See, Dundee's, rival city to Aberdeen, so I have to say Freiburg.
Oh, okay. See, I did not well research that then.
No, it's okay. I like Dundee very much too, and I'm giving it to Freiburg.
I will say, in looking that up, 90% of the pictures of Dundee were the bridge, and I was a little concerned. But we'll move on. This is more of a personal. Actually, now I shouldn't put this in here, but you have a bag of jelly beans. One of the jelly beans is brown, so you're not sure if it's a root beer flavor or a chocolate flavor. You eat it, and it's the one that you don't want.
I say this is boah.
Yeah, this has to be boah, right?
Boah.
Yeah. That happened to me literally a week ago, and it's just burned into my brain. So
we did also get wear a random scarf, Jake.
We did? Oh.
Yep.
I gotta go find a scarf. Do you collect scarves, Derek?
Not so much nowadays. I did at one time, but I sort of got out of the habit of it. So not really on an organized basis, but at one time I did.
We're gonna go with the anniversary Chrome scarf from
look at that.
I went Pacific FC.
Shout out, Mike.
Nice.
All right, Glasgow or Hamburg?
Ooh, this one's difficult.
Ooh, see, yeah. Do you want to guess first?
Yeah. Okay, you go first, people.
I'm gonna guess Glasgow.
I'm gonna guess Hamburg because of the story earlier of listening to NDR.
This one's really hard because Glasgow was my home for 5 years, and then when I went back to work for almost a decade for ESPN UK and BT Sport, it was where I was most weeks. So I don't know. Hamburg, I really like as well. But I do feel that somewhere along the line, Scotland's got to get a vote. So Glasgow.
Okay. If Paul is watching, Paul's probably freaking out too. Shout out Celtic. You're coming out of the arena after being away from the windows for a while. Surprise! It's now snowing/raining like a lot. Bois
This one's a
or
coin
ice?
flip.
Yeah, this one.
I can see either one.
Yeah, I agree. It is, or it could also be a man, no man, no man.
Yeah.
It could be one of those ones, but I'll go Bois. Bois.
Okay, I would have said I. Actually,
Yeah.
does it depend on if it's snowing or raining? Does that change?
Yeah, it might a little bit. Yeah. See, rain doesn't bother me that much because I'm from Scotland, you know. So
Mhm.
rain is just rain, you know. Snow, yeah, I don't like.
Okay.
So yeah, it might. It might.
Cool. Edinburgh or Berlin?
Ooh.
I would
Oh,
guess
yeah.
Berlin, but I've heard a lot of good things about Edinburgh.
I'm gonna guess Edinburgh.
Ooh. Edinburgh.
Let's
Edinburgh.
go.
Because I mean, and again, Berlin is an amazing city. It's unlike any other city, and yeah, it's a hard one. If it had been anywhere but the Scottish capital, I probably would have given it to Berlin. Even though I'm not a natural Berliner, you know, I think some people are. I don't think I am. I don't think it's the German city that speaks most to me. But Edinburgh, if anybody's had the chance to go to Edinburgh, it is, and you can see from that picture, it is just unique. You know, it's basically an old volcano that the old town sits on, and it's spectacular. So if you're going for scenery, if you're going for the look of it, would have to be Edinburgh.
That's very timely because me and my wife, I mean my producer, are thinking about going to Scotland in November. So that.
Oh, well, let me know, and I will pass along some
Ooh,
tips.
I would.
Yeah.
Definitely will.
Yeah.
The last of the Bois Aye. You're on a train after a game. A very drunk fan has an open beer, even though that is not in Ordnung. The train stops super hard, and the beer flies all over you. Bois or Aye.
Before I give my guess, I love that this very drunk fan is a Schalke fan for no reason whatsoever.
I searched up beer Bundesliga, and this was like the second result. So.
I would guess I here.
Yeah, I think it is an or it could easily be was ist denn hier los? Very angry, very angry. That would be a polite angry version. There could be some rude words in there as well, but we'll keep it polite. But yeah, it could be an angry one. That
I would have said the immediate feeling of the beer hitting you is Bois, but in general, I would have said it was Aye.
Maybe it's both.
Maybe it's both. Yeah.
It could be. Yeah, could be.
All right. We are giving you a big honor here, Derek. We are giving you the first ever. I'm not going to answer that pass because this next town division is one that's a little personal. And if you have people tied up, you don't want to do one or the other.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready?
I think I know what this is going to be, but I want to see.
I think you might get it.
I think you have a good idea. Yeah.
As you can see, we have copy and pasted the I am not going to answer that pass. So it is an option for you.
This is what they call Hobson's choice. This is Hobson's choice. And yeah, well, yeah. You see, again, if it's going on holiday, on vacation, I wouldn't go on vacation to either one because Aberdeen's my home city and Köln is the zweite Heimat, so to speak, the second home. I am not going to answer it. So there you go. I will take advantage of the task that has been afforded.
The first time it's ever been made and the first time it's ever been used.
Which one would you recommend to people?
Ooh, that's a better way.
I probably, you know what? I do have to be honest, and I think even if any Aberdonians are watching this, I think they would tell you that one of the best football days they had in their lives would have been in Köln last year at the Euros when Scotland played there. And I've been giving a lot of advice about Köln, and honestly, it was a match made in heaven. Scottish people and Köln, just very similar in terms of the way they are. So, yeah, I think I think on that basis, yeah, you probably would say Köln.
Yeah, that was a real monumental moment in like German soccer history of when Scotland came there and they just all hung out with each other after.
It was honestly, it was wonderful. I had tears in my eyes, covering it and seeing that, and I had a feeling it was going to be like that. But to actually, when you've got 20,000 Scots on this march, going through neighborhoods of Köln that I know that I thought no Scot would ever know. And it's the beauty of the sport that we love.
All right. Well, that was fun time. We're coming to the end of the show. Is there any other things you'd want people to know? Anything you want everyone to, what's like a last message or anything like that?
Well, I just want to say thanks to you guys because, and if you think about everybody in the Bundesliga world, it's a community, I think. And everybody's doing their bit. I'm trying to do my bit. You're doing your bit. And we're trying to spread a bit of love, and we're trying to encourage people to enjoy things that give us enjoyment. And I think that in this world, there's not enough of that. There's a lot of selfishness and a lot of sort of bullying. And I think the great thing about the Bundesliga community, I would say the wider football community, is when it's done at its best, it is love. And it's people sharing ideas and jokes and putting smiles on faces. So I think that's what football has the power to do, that in a way that no other sport does. It's what I think has always attracted me to it. And I think people who find the sport maybe in the USA as they get older, they discover that, oh, this is opening a world that I never knew existed, and that's what we want. And I think that the Premier League already has a lot of followers. I don't think it needs any more. I'm biased, but I don't think it needs any more. The Bundesliga could use more. And of course, I would also mention that the Zweite Bundesliga that so many people enjoy, I think people may know this by now, that the World Feed will now be offered in English as far as every game is concerned in the Zweite Bundesliga. So if you switch on ESPN Plus, weekend of the 2nd of August, you'll get every single game. And so that's something new. But I would just say thanks to you guys for what you're doing, because it's really, really important. And, I think that we are all one team. We all might have our own individual teams that we follow, but we are all one team. And I think for me, German football is unique. And part of that is because of things like 50+1, because it is, as I always say, wider extension of community. That's what it is. It's not about corporate interests. It's not about people wearing suits in a seat on high. It's the sport for the community, for everyone. And wider extension of community, that means, places like the USA and around the world as well. And hopefully we can all continue to be a part of spreading the word about that wider extension of community.
Very well said.
Yeah, but I feel like it's so hard to explain why we literally never mention the Premier League on this show, and like that, I think that puts it perfectly. Like it really, like I always tell people, like the way that like a Manchester United fan will walk into a bar and see a Liverpool fan and they'll immediately start going at each other. Like we at AJ Hudson, we have Dortmund fans and like Gladbach fans sometimes, and we're just like, oh hey. So I think that explains it perfectly. But
no, it's a nice thing about when you take public transport to a game, and say you're in, I don't know, Bremen, and I don't know, Frankfurt are playing or whatever. You'll see Frankfurt fans on the S-Bahn, and that's normal. And I think in German football, there's not the same hostility to the fans of the other team, because they are just like you. They are just like you, but they happen to support a different team. They are not the enemy. There are other battles that you can fight as a fan, and most of them don't have to do with putting down the other set of supporters.
Yeah, and I feel like I see that with like every Bundesliga game I watch. There's always a cut to the crowd, and it's always like two fans from different teams just sitting next to each other, having a beer, having a good time. That's a really good culture to have compared to the other leagues that we don't mention. So that's one of the things that drew me to the Bundesliga as well. So that's a lot of respect for that.
No, that's great. Delighted that you managed to to get into it.
Yeah.
Well, we greatly appreciate your time. This was a great way to kick off the new season. Donor slots are in the work, so we have not forgot about that if you're watching. And we did turn off chat alerts and things like that. We'll literally start the show by going through every single one of them.
I will also say right now, thank you to everybody that
Yeah.
gifted or subbed in chat. I know we couldn't, and also all the interaction. I know we couldn't get to everything, but
yeah.
we appreciate y'all for stopping by. Obviously, thanks to Derek for taking time out of his vacation to come chat with us. This was something we were looking forward to for a while now, and I'm very glad it went as well as it did. So,
guys, thank you for having me, honestly, and I'm sure we can do it again sometime. So, give us a shout.
Hopefully, you don't need to use the "I'm not going to answer that" pass anymore. We'll have less divisive question. But...
One time only.
Anyway, thank you, Derek. Thank you all for watching and supporting, and we will be back next week and watch the Bundesliga.